Things don't appear as they are. Do we change them, or do we merely accept them? That's the question in this episode of the Gratitude Journal podcast.
This is the Gratitude Journal podcast.
Dun, 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 dun. Welcome back, my friends. Here I am. That's right. My demise greatly exaggerated. You would not think that, though, by the space of time that elapses between episodes. But that's okay, I guess. I was reminded a couple of times by a couple of downloaders that you need to get on the stick a little more. And, have you nothing to show gratitude-wise? And okay, I buy that. Not that I don't, because I do. It's just I haven't documented it with any regularity. It's Matthew here. Thanks for being a part of this podcast, the 98th episode, I believe, of the Gratitude Journal podcast, the podcast designed in mind for us to find ways, recognize ways to be grateful for the things that are around us. And as I've mentioned numerous times at the beginning of these episodes, sometimes that is more difficult than other times, and sometimes it's pretty easy, but we just don't do it. And both of those things can pose their challenges. That sounded cryptic and that sounded generic, but I didn't really intend it to sound cryptic or generic. It's just that's the way things go, the ebb and flow of life. As I explained to a friend of mine, people themselves, they care about what happens in my life and vice versa, but we're not necessarily invested all the time because we have our own things going on in our lives. And that's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. And I admit to sometimes being a little down in the dumps that, maybe so-and-so isn't showing as much, interest. And then I realize, that's pretty, I don't know, that's just not good that I'm thinking like that. And it's really not natural. And it's really not right thinking, in my opinion. So speaking of cryptic, I had made mention before in the last episode, which seems light years away now, that I had a big announcement. And here's the thing, though, about big announcements, as I mentioned rather cryptically in that episode. There are people on some of the social media platforms who say, coming Tuesday, I have a big announcement. And, people go, oh, just get to it now. You took the time to do it today to, post a tease. Why not just tell us? And so I feel like in my case, I just wasn't quite ready. And maybe in their case, it'd be like, well, yeah, but, I have a non-compete and I can't mention anything about, this new job I'm taking. So I kind of get that. But in my case, I guess I kind of switched gears because my big announcement was going to be one big announcement. And then after further review, I decided to augment my big announcement. Is that possible? Or am I just being kind of zany about this? It seems like it's both. Okay, so first I was really kind of thinking like, it's kind of time to end this podcast. I mean, I feel like I've said everything that I can possibly say. And I mentioned that as my initial big announcement because one of my favorite television series of all time so far is Better Call Saul. And it dovetails with one of my other favorite series called Breaking Bad. And, I was so bummed out when Better Call Saul ended because I knew it was eventually going to happen. And when it did happen, I was really kind of bummed. Like I was invested in the characters in this story. And I would see them do these interviews as the real people and not as their characters. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, you just died 3 episodes ago. Come on, that's how I know you. That's how I recognize you. And so long story short, I thought to myself, this is true. All good things must come to an end, or all things must come to an end, whether they're good or bad. And, in baseball for years and years, it was managers are hired to be fired. And as soon as they have the press conference to announce, they're hiring, who knows? And in 2 years, they might have a press conference to announce they're firing because they didn't meet expectations. And so I thought, I have a goal. And the goal is to get to 100 episodes. And so on the 100th episode, that will be the last episode of the Gratitude Journal podcast. And, it will just go down in whatever, infamy or, whatever, a bowl of flames. Hopefully maybe one person, was affected by this podcast and its 100 episode run, and it's just time to move into another area. And I let that kind of sink. I'd go on my walk and I'd say to Don, I'm going to go on my walk. It's after my workout, which I did this morning. And, amidst raindrops or searing heat or whatever, I would think, okay, I'm pretty comfortable with this decision. But something changed. I don't know. I woke up and I thought, maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly. Maybe the act of sitting here in front of this microphone, trying to work in this thing amidst a job and running a business and being a caregiver and, trying to find, little molecules of downtime. Maybe I'm looking at this podcast incorrectly. Maybe I should be looking at it as a way to give back in my small, little, minute way, rather than looking at it as a burden. And I've said to other people in the past, hey, great advertisers and big corporate brands, they don't stop advertising when they've reached their goal or surpassed, their quarterly profit goal. They do even more of it. And I always say to somebody in the radio world when we were playing hit music, just when you as a disc jockey are tired of that Madonna song, you're not playing it enough. You need to double the amount of time that it needs to play in order to get other people, because you're hearing it every day. They're not hearing it every day. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe I need to double down a little bit, not so much do more episodes, although I'm sure people who are the 1 or 2 or 3 people who listen regularly would I would love to have an episode like every week like you used to do. Maybe I need to invest more in this. And so I think part of my big announcement is that I would really like to start implementing sort of a video part of this because, I don't mind being on camera. I'm not the most photogenic person, but there are a ton of people who are, not very photogenic, to be sure, who find it necessary and vital to be out there in video land, sharing their content and sharing what they hope to be are important things. And I guess in the end, I sort of think of gratitude is something important. And there are days where I have to remind myself that the gratitude is important to find. And it's tough. And, I'm not lying when I say that's tough to find. And there are times when it's very, very true. So hopefully I will have info sooner rather than later about how I'm going to implement this new package. So I guess I found a kind of a revitalized energy as far as the gratitude journal. So I'm glad I switched gears. I hope I'll be able to live up to my expectations of being a better poster and being a better person who uploads, content on a more regular basis. And that hopefully, you, the few who actually are subscribers will enjoy it. And so that's my big announcement, and sorry for being so cryptic. Some of you know I like to photograph things. I don't consider myself a photographer, really. I'm sort of amused by cameras, and this has been kind of a recent development where, for whatever reason, Donna bought me sort of like a Canon kit lens and a camera body, and It's one of those things, as photographers know, cameras and the whole business of photography, whether it's for pleasure or for business, is not the cheapest thing in the world. These things cost money, and while phones can do an incredible amount of things, and I don't discount what phones can do, and I use my phone, for both video and photography, nothing rivals a camera. It just is not the same thing. And, when you're shooting in RAW, and photographers know what that is, it just gives you so much more latitude and dynamic range to hopefully make what you want to portray in your images kind of stand out and jump. And so I've been involved in this little enterprise for the last several years, both as a content creator for, my business and the people I work for, and for myself as well. And I ran into this situation and have been running into this situation lately. And it could be because I'm just not a very good photographer and I'm still learning even the basics. I've tried to explain it to Mally when she was still living about the exposure triangle. And I got about halfway through and I realized I was just muddying this up so much. And she was patiently just looking at me, kind of almost nodding her head. And I'm thinking to myself, she is thinking that I am like the biggest pile of dog turd right now because I am not explaining this well at all. I have lots of things that I need to do as far as fundamentals and to be better at what I do. So I follow a lot of content creators. I watch a lot of video and I try to hone in on things that interest me as far as photography and videography. And the other day, it was like sprinkling a little bit. I had my phone with me and I was taking the photo of this leaf. And then the way the light kind of hit this leaf and it accentuated sort of the silhouette of the drops of water that had fallen from the previous hour's rain. It just, like, to my eye, it just looked amazing. And I wanted to capture this image. So, that is the real goal, I think, of anybody who does this, either for a living or for pleasure, is that we want to capture this. Like, we want to remember this for a long time. And now, of course, due to all the platforms, we want to share. And some people actually want to make money, with their images. And then when I sat down in my chair later in the evening, we had a baseball game on, and I was just sitting there with, an IPA. I think it was an IPA from Millersburg Brewing. It was delicious. I was kind of looking through some of these images, and they just weren't right. Like what I envisioned in my brainstem about, wow, that's awesome, I'm going to capture that, click. And it's never, ever that easy. And it's just to the degree that you can accept what you had envisioned it to be and call it done. When Donna was taking art classes, her famous instructor, Jack Richard, would say, after people would ask her, well, when am I done with this? You're done when you have realized your intention. And so my intention is always to capture what I'm seeing with the human eye. And, 3 cheers and kudos to the human eye, right? Because there's no better lens than the human eye. You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a lens, and it's just never going to be as good as the human eye. But that's what we want. We want our images to, pop and excite and thrill and capture and do all those other things. It just wasn't happening. And I thought, okay, well, I can augment it. I can take it into Lightroom or Photoshop, and I can do a little bit of, tailoring with it, which is what we do when we shoot raw images. Even then, though, it still didn't match what I had envisioned it to be. And it brought up sort of a larger question. Do we accept the fact that whatever experience in our life doesn't meet our expectations? Do we accept that and move on, or do we try to change it? And who's right? Who's correct when they say, you need to get out of that situation, you need to change that? Is that the correct way to go? Is changing it to meet our specifications better than merely finding a way to accept our present reality? I have a family member who I think listens to this podcast. I'm not sure. I won't divulge gender or divulge certainly the name, but I know that there is a family member going through a pretty bad crisis right now. And the fact that this person is leaning in the direction of changing their present reality rather than trying to find the gratitude within the current structure is something that's been on my mind quite a bit lately. And I don't say that it's been on my mind quite a bit lately to be judgmental, because I'm not trying necessarily to judge this family member. I'm trying to understand where this person is at and whether I would think that it would be better for that person to stay or leave this thing that they're going through. And I almost received sort of a full frontal view of that while visiting my parents. We finally got them into an assisted living facility, and my sisters have just been amazing. In fact, I'm going to send them like a thank you card, and I know that's never enough. I put in a gift certificate or something, or a gift card. It's not going to be enough for everything that they've done for our parents while they were in their apartment all these years. Just the time, the commitment. I am very, very appreciative of what they've done. And it's so wonderful, first of all, to be able to find a place for them, because we'd been on waiting lists and just something happened that made their transition happen, and that this particular opening occurred. And we've spent the last 2 weeks sort of converging on narrowing down the things that they'll need in their new place, and then cleaning the old place, which was a dump. And I can't believe they actually let my parents live there. The people who own this facility, this apartment complex, it was just miserable. And I'm so grateful that that opportunity arrived for them. But the transition was just horrific for them. I mean, my parents had not stuck their head out of a window in 2 years, except to get a COVID shot. I mean, they don't wander down the hall and open the door and just look outside. They don't have a window open most days. They've been confined, and really quite by their choice, inside this apartment. And, it's not healthy. It's hard to get them to, get out of a chair because, my mom has a lot of mobility issues and my father isn't much better, and they just turned 94. So, being able to find a used, lift chair that somebody donated to us. I mean, those things are expensive, and that will help my mom sort of get out of the chair when she needs to. And it's just been amazing that this happened, and we had to react this quickly, and just to watch my whole family mobilize, around this. And, I was sitting there yesterday, and my mother was just having a lot of issues, just getting from like one chair to another and using a walker. And she just wasn't in a good mood. And my dad wasn't in a good mood because they were in this place and they didn't really understand why they had to be there, but they're there. And so I had to run out and find somebody to kind of help. And just the fact that I was able to walk outside and ask somebody if they could help, and that they came inside and they helped, and they bathed her and they got her into a chair, and they were comfortable. And the remaining part of our visit was just like sitting in their old place 10 years ago. And it was just an opportunity for me to just soak in to the gratitude of having the opportunity to have my parents in this place at this time. I'm not going to bring up the money part, because the money part is depressing, but we've all agreed that there's a finite amount. It's necessary. we're going to go with the flow and live in today, and we'll deal with it when we have to deal with it. Because as people know who are caring for someone, there is a threshold where your ability to do what is necessary to, in the end, help them, because that's what you want to do. Your threshold, there's only so much you can do. I mean, picking a 94-year-old woman off of the carpet who has fallen is just not something in my wheelhouse. And I'm sure there's a way to do that, but I'm not trained to do it. And it would just be to our advantage to have some people around her that are trained to do it, which also makes me want to say at the top of my lungs, anybody who works in an assisted living facility should be making 6 figures a year. I mean, someone who's really dedicated and cares about people, they should be making what financial advisors make and what, attorneys make, because these are the people that we're going to be relying on. These are the people that are going to be giving our parents and me and our kids the care that they need in their elder years. And the fact that they are not regaled as heroes is just, it's criminal. And so that's my feeling about that. I'm not going to wax philosophic about that anymore, but just knowing that we had to accept this situation and go with the flow, even though it wasn't perfect, this is something that had to be done. Is this like the photo that, yes, I can't make it reflect the current reality that I want, but I'm going to accept where it's at? I've had job situations that are very similar to that, where you think the job is going to be amazing and phenomenal, and you get on the job, and after a period of time passes, you think to yourself, this isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. I mean, that guy seemed really nice in the interview, and now he kind of seems like a prick. And do I want to work the rest of my days for this guy? Or it could be, I thought I was really going to enjoy, creating content for these people, but I don't know. It's not really satisfying me. Or I thought I wanted to cook Peruvian food as the head sous chef at this restaurant, but it doesn't really seem like it is turning out the way I thought it was going to turn out. So, I mean, I've had those situations, and then I think you are smacked on the side of the head with that realization. Do I accept the imperfections in all their glory and realize that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages and make peace? Or is it my goal to always be in a position to find change when change is necessary, and boom, I'm out of here? Because I have encountered both people. And if you choose the latter, is there a degree where we find gratitude to be able to have the foresight or the wisdom to remove ourselves from a situation? I'm dealing with that right now because I take this class, and it's kind of like, I've always been a fan. I was telling my brother the other day, last night actually, I said, I've always been a fan of having, I guess, sort of a security net, because when you're in business and you have clients, and sometimes the work you do for some of them is not work that is going to make the top 10 list of things that are really in demand right now. And you think, well, if this person wakes up one day and decides, oh, they want to use somebody else to do what it is I do, well, then I'm done, and automatically, almost like Goodfellas when they, put that, ice pick in the back of someone's neck, in 2 seconds, boom, it's over. There's no hard feelings or whatever. They just sent out an email. Hey, this is going to be the last check we're going to send because we're going to start using, fill in the blank. It's demoralizing, and you're like, what? But you have to prepare. And in my head, I always think, well, I have to prepare for this stuff. Like if this happens, I have to make sure that I have something, in its place. So I've thought, I'm going to take this class. This class, it's like a certificate class for something. I'm not even going to talk about it because it's just so boring. That's not even worth talking about. But it's like, okay, I can stomach this. I can swallow this. I can do this. I'm got about halfway through. And just, for the last 4 days, I've just been staring at it thinking, I got to make some progress on this because, I'm paying for it. And it's just not doing it for me. I mean, it's just not something that I even done. I mean, I would love to flash the certificate and go, I finished, because there's nothing better than finishing something. I mean, I have been in situations where I finished something, and there's nothing better than completing it, and you just feel so much pride, and you're grateful that you had the tenacity to overcome obstacles, and I'm thrilled with people who overcome obstacles and actually achieve their thing. I mean, it's kind of it's thrilling. But I don't even know if that would do it for me. It's like, okay, here it is. I did it. It's like those people go, yeah, I had to get a master's. Master's? Well, holy crap. It probably cost $40,000. Yeah, no, what? That's what I had to do. Yeah, I got it done. Or I have a doctorate, What? And so, I mean, there are people who have to look at it that way, but I've never really looked at things like that. And so I have a decision to make. Do I hang tight and show gratitude that I have got halfway through so far and just finish? Or do I why are you investing any more time in this? Go find something that you really want to do. If you need, a safety net, or you need some extra income or whatever, and go that direction. So I'm in the same spot as filming that leaf with the water drops on it. Do I change this and make it to my liking, or do I accept it and just go with the flow? And either way, I think the purpose of this whole thing is to be comfortable wherever your present moment is. And if your present moment tells you to make a change, then maybe that's what you need to do. Or if your present moment tells you to be appreciative for what you have, then maybe that's what you need to do. I can't tell you what to do, but I can say that maybe it's wherever you find the most gratitude should be the leaning, direction as to where you should go and where I should go. So it's fodder for future thoughts, and we can ponder it together as we try to figure out this or that. It's not easy. It's not easy for my family member who's in this same boat. It's not easy, certainly, for my parents. It's not easy making, trying to make dumb decisions about taking some stupid, boring class or not. And for bigger decisions, like, is moving better, or changing jobs better, or relocating better, or anything, this or that, and trying to find gratitude in one of them. I'll be trying to find gratitude this week when we have another 6-month eval on Donna and, her dementia team. And it's never really good. It's never really a good visit. But I'm going to try to find small slivers of something to be grateful for. So here's hoping on this Labor Day Monday, a rainy one too, here in Northeast Ohio. I did my walk yesterday with an umbrella, which I rarely do, but it was raining pretty heavily, and with my torn rotator cuff, it was actually kind of hard to hold an umbrella on a 30-minute walk, but I did it. Today, I didn't require an umbrella, but it's not very pretty outside. But I'm grateful for the fact that, for the most part, aside from doing a little bit of work here in the lower chambers, I have a day off, and I might go visit my parents again today. You never know. Here's hoping you are finding these little ways to find gratitude, and that your this or that decision-making process becomes more crystalline. Is that a word? That's the one I'm using. And thank you for downloading and listening to this, another episode of the Gratitude Journal Podcast.